It happened when I rushed to the operating room, seized by panic upon hearing that my husband was in critical condition. Suddenly, a nurse grabbed me. "Hide and trust me," she whispered. I obeyed and concealed myself in an adjoining room. 10 minutes later, the door opened, and what I saw froze my blood. It turns out that night it was raining, as if the sky wanted to pour out all its sorrow. The wall clock in Nia's apartment had just struck midnight. Nia, dressed in a long silk lounge robe, could not sit still. She paced the living room, checking the silent cell phone resting on the table over and over again. Her husband, Tariq, had not returned yet. It was not the first time. Of course, the massive construction project Tariq was managing often required him to work late. But tonight was different. A strange unease had settled in her chest, cold and piercing like the night air. That same afternoon they had gotten into a small argument. It was nothing serious, just a matter of money. Nia had asked Tariq to cut back a little on his most extravagant spending, but he had reacted with irritation. He said she did not understand the pressure of his work. Normally, on a night like this, Tariq would have sent a text. Still at the site. "Traffic is crazy. Don't wait up." But tonight, his phone remained silent. Nia had called him 3 times. The first time it rang, but he did not answer. The second and third went straight to voicemail. His battery probably died. Nia tried to reassure herself, but the bad feeling would not go away. The rain intensified outside. Its sound was like the incessant beating of a war drum. Nia approached the window and drew back the curtains. The street below was wet and glistening, empty. She hugged herself, feeling a chill. She thought of her mother-in-law, who always worried excessively whenever Tariq was late. Luckily, she did not live with them. Otherwise, the atmosphere would have been much more tense. Exactly at 12:30, the sharp ring of the landline shattered the silence. In the stillness of midnight, the sound was so loud that Nia jumped. Her heart began to pound immediately. The house phone almost never rang. With a trembling hand, she picked up the receiver. "Hello?" Her voice sounded choked. "Am I speaking with Mrs. Nia, wife of Mr. Tariq?" said a voice on the other end, monotone, professional, and terribly cold. "Yes, this is she. Has something happened to my husband?" Nia asked, gripping the receiver tight. "Ma'am, please remain calm. Your husband, Mr. Tariq, has suffered a serious traffic accident on Interstate 85. An ambulance has just brought him to Atlanta General Medical Center. His condition is critical. They are taking him to the operating room for emergency surgery right now." Nia's world seemed to stop. The receiver felt slippery in her hand. Critical. Surgery. Those words escaped like a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. The director of our hospital, Dr. Alistair Vaughn, is going to lead the operation. It would be best if you came to the hospital immediately." The voice continued, but Nia barely heard it. Dr. Alistair Vaughn. Nia knew that name. Dr. Vaughn was the family physician Tariq trusted. Tariq respected him enormously. This provided a slight comfort, but the word critical kept echoing in her head. Yes, I'm on my way right now." Nia hung up without waiting for a reply. For a few seconds, she stood there paralyzed. Her legs felt weak. No, this could not be. It is a nightmare. Her husband, Tariq, the strong black man who always seemed invincible, now in critical condition. Her brain ordered her body to move, but it refused. Then a jolt of adrenaline surged through her. She grabbed a long coat hanging by the door. She did not care about her appearance. She did not even change out of her silk robe. Car keys, wallet, that was all she could think about. She ran out of the apartment and took the elevator, feeling completely hollow. The rain slapped her cold cheeks as soon as she stepped out of the lobby. Nia ran toward her car in the parking lot. Her hands were shaking so much that she struggled to insert the key into the ignition. On the third try, the engine finally roared to life. She slammed on the gas without waiting for it to warm up. The drive to Atlanta General usually took 30 minutes, but that night, under the torrential rain and blinded by panic, the road seemed like an eternity. She drove like a madwoman. Tears mixed with the water on the windshield, blurring her vision. The wipers worked frantically, but not fast enough to clear the torrent of water and tears. Her thoughts jumped from one side to the other. The image of Tariq laughing at dinner last week, the image of Tariq angry during their argument that afternoon. Guilt stabbed her. Why had he gotten angry over money? What if that had been their last conversation? Lord, save him. Please, save my husband. Nia repeated over and over in a prayer. Her lips trembled. She no longer cared about running red lights or dangerously overtaking other cars. All she wanted was to arrive and see Tariq and confirm that the word critical had been a mistake. Finally, the imposing white building of Atlanta General appeared before her eyes. She parked the car haphazardly in the emergency zone, ignoring the shouts of a security guard. She ran into the emergency lobby, breathless, her clothes soaked with rain and tears. "My husband Tariq! A traffic accident!" she screamed at the nurse at the information desk. The nurse consulted her computer. "Tariq, yes, they have taken him up to the 4th floor, to the surgical wing. Take that elevator and turn left, operating room 3. "Thank you." Nia did not waste a second. She pressed the elevator button impatiently. The wait felt eternal. She decided to run up the emergency stairs. She climbed the 4 floors without stopping, her heart about to explode. She reached the 4th floor. The hallway was silent, sterile, and smelled of that piercing scent of disinfectant she had always hated about hospitals. The corridor was long and shadowy, lit only by white fluorescent lights. Turning left, she saw it at the end of the hall. Double steel doors. Above them, a red light shone brightly next to words that froze her blood. Operating room 3, in session. Tariq was in there, fighting between life and death. Nia started to run again, tears welling up once more. She had to go in. She had to see him. She reached out a hand, trembling violently, ready to push that cold steel door. Nia's hand was just inches from the cold steel surface. She could feel the chill of the air conditioning emanating from the other side. She took a deep breath, preparing to burst in. She was willing to face anything just to be by Tariq's side. Just as her fingertips grazed the metal, a firm hand grabbed her arm from the side. "Don't do it!" Nia let out a small scream and spun around, startled. A young nurse was looking at her with frightened eyes. The nurse wore impeccable blue scrubs. Her surgical mask hung around her neck. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with a terrifying urgency. Her ID badge read, "Ayana, nurse." "You are Tariq's wife, right?" the nurse whispered quickly, her voice low and desperate. Nia nodded, seized by panic, trying to break free from the nurse's grip. "Yes, my husband is in there. I have to go in. Let me go." "No." Nurse Ayana gripped her tighter, pulling her away from the operating room door. "You cannot go in. They must not know you are here. It is very important." Nia frowned. For a moment, confusion overtook panic. "What do you mean? Who are they? My husband is in critical condition. Listen to me, ma'am." Ayana's eyes locked onto Nia's, pleading. "I know this is going to sound crazy, but this is not a rescue operation. It is a trap." That word petrified Nia. A trap. What did that mean? "Dr. Vaughn is in there." "That is precisely the problem," hissed Ayana. "There is no time for explanations. You have to hide right now." Ayana pulled Nia, who remained stunned. She pointed to a dark wooden door on the other side of the hallway, slightly hidden behind a vending machine. The door had no sign. It looked like a storage room or a utility closet. "Go in there. It is a staff locker room that is barely used at night. Lock the door from the inside. Whatever you hear, do not make any noise. Do not come out until I come to get you. No matter what happens, do not come out." Nia's mind was spinning. None of this made sense. A nurse was telling her to hide from her husband's surgery, calling it a trap. But the sheer terror in Ayana's eyes was too real. It was not an act. Something was very wrong in this hospital, behind that operating room door. "Why should I trust you?" whispered Nia, her voice trembling between fear and anger. "Because I am the only one who saw your husband's real medical chart before Dr. Vaughn changed it," Ayana said quickly. He is not in critical condition from the accident. Quick, they could come out at any moment." That last sentence worked. Ayanna practically pushed Nia to the other side of the hallway. With her mind in chaos, Nia followed her. She opened the locker room door. It was dark and smelled stale, like old coffee and sweat. Ayanna shoved her inside. "Lock it and trust me," she whispered once more before closing the door silently from the outside. Nia heard the soft click of the door closing. She was alone in complete darkness. She fumbled for the lock on the handle and turned it shut. Her heart beat so hard her chest hurt. She was short of breath. She leaned against the door, trying to process what had just happened. Hide, trap, fake chart. Dr. Vaughn. Nia slid down to the cold floor. The room was only lit by a faint slit of light filtering from under the door. She could make out the silhouettes of rows of metal lockers around her. She hugged her knees, trying to stop the violent tremors shaking her body. What was happening? Was that nurse, Ayanna, crazy, or had she just saved her life? Her thoughts returned to Tariq. If he was not in critical condition, where was he? What were they doing in there, in that operating room? Nia crawled silently toward the door and pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. The hallway outside was deserted. She heard nothing but the thunderous beating of her own heart. She looked through the keyhole, but she could only see the wall of the hallway opposite. She checked the time on her cell phone. 1 a.m. Time seemed to crawl. Every second was like an hour. She was alone in the dark, listening to a terrifying silence. Her mind filled with the worst possible scenarios. What if Nurse Ayanna had locked her in here and Tariq really needed her? No. She had to trust her gut, and her gut told her that Ayanna's eyes were sincere. She waited 1 minute, 2 minutes, straining her ears, catching every slight sound. Distant footsteps at the end of the hall, the hum of an ice machine, but nothing from operating room 3. 5 minutes. She was starting to feel suffocated. The room was stifling. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run out and break down that operating room door. 7 minutes. She prayed in her mind, no longer just for Tariq, but also for herself. She felt like a rat in a trap. 10 minutes. The 10 longest minutes of her life. Suddenly, she heard a crisp click from the other side, not at her door, but in the hallway. Nia held her breath. She pressed her eye to the keyhole, but the angle was not right. She moved, looking for a crack in the door hinges. Through the narrow space between the door and the frame, she could see the red light above operating room 3 had turned off. The operation was over. Then, Nia heard a soft hiss. The steel doors of the operating room were opening. The steel doors of the operating room opened with a silent hiss. In the stillness of the sterile hallway, the sound was like a glacier cracking. Nia held her breath, her entire body tense behind the dark locker room door. She kept her eyes fixed on the narrow slit between the door and the frame, her only window to a world that had just turned upside down. The first silhouette to emerge was Dr. Alistair Vaughn. He was still wearing his blue surgical scrubs, but he had already pulled his mask down to his neck. He did not look like a doctor who had just fought for the life of a critical patient. He did not look tired or stressed or sad. He looked relaxed, with methodical movements. He was peeling off rubber gloves stained with what Nia now knew was fake blood. She felt the first wave of nausea. Then a second silhouette appeared. Nia expected a gurney. She expected a helpless body covered by a sheet. She expected the beep of a heart monitor. What she saw froze the blood in her veins. It was Tariq, her husband. Tariq was not lying down. He was not being pushed on a gurney. Tariq was walking. He walked out of the operating room on his own 2 feet. He was also wearing blue surgical scrubs, as if he were part of the team and not the patient. He stretched, turning his neck from side to side as if he had been sitting for too long. He was healthy, strong, and completely unharmed. Nia covered her mouth with both hands. A whimper of despair almost escaped her throat. This was impossible. It was a hallucination. It had to be the effect of shock and panic. And then a third person came out. A woman. She was tall, slender, with long weaves flowing down her back, and under her doctor's coat, she wore an elegant evening dress. Nia recognized her instantly. Janice, Tariq's personal assistant. The one who always looked at her with disdain at company events. Tariq had always told Nia that her jealousy was unfounded. Turned out Nia was not blind. She had simply been naive. The plan worked perfectly. Tariq's voice rang crisp in the silent hallway. It was deep and calm, without the slightest tremor of pain. Nia felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Dr. Vaughn chuckled as he tossed the gloves into a biohazard bin. Of course it worked. The emergency staff is on my side. The fake accident report is in the system. The fake ambulance did its job. Officially, right now, Mr. Tariq has suffered severe internal bleeding. I am dying to see Nia's face, Janice said with a voice that sounded like the hiss of a snake. She handed Tariq a bottle of water. I bet she is on her way. Crying a river, seized by panic. Poor idiot. Tariq laughed. He laughed. That laugh that once always reassured Nia now sounded like that of a demon. She will be completely devastated. She is so stupid. Nia bit into the palm of her hand. The physical pain was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. Not only had they betrayed her, they were mocking her. They had turned her into the punchline of their macabre plan. The important thing is that when she arrives, Dr. Vaughn intervened, his tone becoming serious again. We have to play our parts, Tariq. You have to go to the recovery room. Quick, lie down. We will hook up the IV and the monitors. You have to look weak but stable. Post-op. I know, Tariq said, rolling his eyes. I am weak, but thanks to this great doctor, I survived. I will meet Nia in the waiting room, continued Dr. Vaughn. I will give her the good and the bad news. The operation was a success. The bleeding stopped, but... He paused dramatically. But? Asked Janice, eyes shining with anticipation. But, said Dr. Vaughn, a slight smile drawing on his lips, I will tell her that during the surgery we found something else, a very dangerous blood clot near the liver. I will tell her that I need her signature for a second procedure tomorrow morning, a very urgent and high-risk internal cleaning procedure. Of course, added Tariq with a malicious smile. Exactly, nodded Dr. Vaughn. A procedure with a very high risk of complications with the anesthesia. If something were to happen to her on the operating table, it would be a pity, but we would have done everything possible. Nia finally understood. Everything clicked into place. The target was not Tariq. The accident was not real. It was all a setup for her. Her mind raced back 3 weeks. Tariq had come home with a stack of papers for a new life insurance policy worth millions of dollars. Nia asked him why they needed a new one. He said it was to secure their retirement, their future. Nia remembered joking, Why am I the one insured? It should be you with how dangerous your work on the sites is. Tariq simply laughed and said, It's part of an investment package, baby. You just sign. And Nia, trusting as always, signed. She had just signed her own death warrant, and the argument that afternoon had not been about spending. Nia had complained that the premium for the new insurance was too expensive. She had asked Tariq to cancel it. No wonder he got so angry. Nia, unknowingly, was ruining his murder plan. And when she doesn't wake up from the operating table, Tariq's voice pulled her out of her horrifying thoughts. The insurance payout is millions of dollars. Can we leave this country and start a new life in Switzerland? Janice laughed and hung onto Tariq's arm. I have already booked the tickets to Zurich. The 3 of them, her husband, his mistress, and her family doctor. The 3 of them had planned her murder in such detail in the place that should be the safest in the world. A hospital. Nia's blood was no longer frozen. It began to boil. The fear that had paralyzed her was slowly transforming into something else, something cold, hard, and sharp. Fury. She watched the 3 of them walk calmly down the hall, away from the operating room. They probably turned the corner for the elevator to the recovery room. The sound of their footsteps faded. The hallway became silent again. Naya leaned against the door, her body shaking violently, but it was no longer from fear. She was shaking with pure rage. She was trapped alone in a dark, stifling locker room while her murderers were on the same floor waiting for her to fall into their trap. She had to get out of there. But how? Suddenly she heard a sound at her door, not in the hallway. A soft click. Someone was inserting a key from the outside. Nia froze. Her heart stopped. Did they know she was here? Did Shanice, Tariq, Dr. Vaughn realize someone was listening? Had they come back for her?